Hey, so we're here for episode 7. I labeled last week's episode 6 Glory Days, but me and Aaron are both coming off some good seasons, going into my 5th season, Aaron's 4th season. And, feeling good about getting back to spring training. We talked about spring training, and people start to know your name, and you're feeling more confident. We both came off a pretty good year, and so here it is, 1995, and I'm headed to Double A. So after a couple years in A ball, I'm at Double A now. And one of the big things that people don't know, Aaron, like in your contract, right, $1,500,000, you get I think it was a $2,500 bonus if you make it to Double A for like 60 days. So, again, when you're making $1,200, $1,500, $1,800 a month, to get an extra $2,500 was a big deal. So, not just excited to be one step closer to the big leagues at Double A, but just a little bit of extra cash to help out, during that time. So.
That's true. It's called the incentive bonus program, and we still do it to this day.
Okay.
Pretty much every team does it, I believe. And there's small bonuses as you get to each level, and you have to spend 60 days, like you said, at that level before the bonus hits. And I can't remember how much it is, but it's a little bit higher at each level. Kicks in maybe high A, Double A, Triple A, and then the big leagues. So it's a little extra.
Yeah.
The agents always ask for.
A little more incentive, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Double A for me, I headed to Knoxville after a couple years in Florida, a little bit of a back injury, and then recouped with a good season. I started out okay. It was back and forth. I talked about Myrtle Beach, where I started 4-0, then 7-0, and then the next year I was like 2-0 before I got hurt, and then 10-6. So all these years with a ton of wins, and I think I was like 3-3, about a little over a month into the season. Had some good starts, some okay starts. I think my ERA was like high 3s or 3.7, something like that. And I got that call, a coach wants to see you in the office. And I'm like, shit, it's not good, right? I mean, there are some good alternatives potentially, like, hey, maybe I'm getting traded, right? Like, I've had all these good seasons. Maybe I'm part of a trade, getting a new opportunity with a new club. But like I said, I wasn't 0-6. I didn't have like a 7 ERA. And so I go into the office, and they're like, hey, we're bringing up a guy from A-ball, from like the Myrtle Beach, Hagerstown team. And he's going to take your spot in the rotation. Like, you're not doing bad, but they want to give this guy a chance. So the first thing that went through my head was like, I was 7-0 when I was at that league, and I never got a chance to move up. And here's this guy. It was, I don't know, maybe he was 5-2. He was a lefty. Scott Pace. I don't know if you remember him. He was the guy.
Yeah.
He was the guy that came up, and I wasn't happy. One other thing I'll talk about in a second was that was a strike year too in '95 that we can get into a little bit. But yeah, they were like, you're going to go to the bullpen. And so, you think if you're in a company, right, you do some research, and you know the person's background and things like that. And I'm like, all right, I've been with the organization for 4 years. And they ask me, hey, have you ever pitched out of the bullpen? So, here you are coming off of these good years. You're feeling valued with the club, and kind of a little bit of a setback. But then they're asking, like, hey, have you ever pitched out of the bullpen? Like, hey, maybe that's something you should know about me if I've ever pitched out of the bullpen after 4 years. But
Yeah.
So anyways, kind of a little bit of a setback. And then, I'll back up a little bit. So 95 was the year of another strike that we, during spring training, I actually got recruited to maybe cross the lines. The Blue Jays, if you remember, were one of the only teams that we weren't fielding a really good team during spring training. They actually went back and got some guys that had been released in former years to come, so they didn't have any guys crossing the line and cause any friction. And, I remember they came and approached me a couple times spring training, and, we just talked about $2,500. It was like a $50,000, $100,000 guarantee. Like, you cross the line, even if you don't start the season, you're going to get a check for $50 or $100,000.
Right.
And
Remember that.
yeah, and I remember I was in the training room one day, and I know that Mel Queen had approached me, and people aren't supposed to know much, right? But somehow David Wells found out. He ended up in the training room with me, and he was giving me some shit, about you can't do this, not good for your career, and this is before, what I just explained, but and then we went into that season, if you remember, the rosters were super inflated, right? They didn't release as many guys, so the minor league teams, instead of carrying the normal 25, I think we were carrying 30 on each of the teams for a little bit until the season, the big league season got started or whatever. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the Blue Jays were one of two or three teams, the most I recall, that didn't want their minor leaguers to cross the line.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the rationale was about that, but in your case, that's a tough decision. You're thinking about the future, you think about the present. We were both late draft picks. We didn't sign for much money.
Yeah.
And we hadn't been making much money in A-ball or Double-A, and so when somebody floats, $50,000 in front of you, there were just so many unknowns, and it was tough to get good advice on what to do.
Yeah.
And the major leaguers would come by and say, "Well, we're doing this. We're striking for you guys, right?"
Right.
But you're sitting there I was coming off a shaky year, or I can't remember the circumstances, but we don't know if we're making the big leagues or not.
Right.
I mean, what is it? 12 to 14% of minor leaguers make the big leagues.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a difficult situation for a lot of minor leaguers to be in.
Yeah. Yeah, I just remember, like you said, them coming by, and then, the hardest part is we carried 30, and then the season started a little bit late. Well, then the trickle down happened, right? So those guys that they kept that were on the 40-man and were kind of practicing with the big leaguers on the side or whatever, all trickled down. And then guys that had been there for 2 or 3 weeks, boom, release. So, back to what you just said, hey, we're doing this for you, we're doing this for you. And then 2 weeks later, people that had moved in with their families, some guys had families and stuff, and like, hey, that's it, you're released, like where were the big leaguers then, so it was a very difficult time, but, once that all passed, you got into the season, as I said, and I felt like I was doing okay till I got kind of replaced there, so how did your season start in 95? Do you remember how your season was going in 95?
Yeah, so I remember this vividly, and my whole takeaway and the whole moral of my story for that year, and my advice to and I still tell this story to kids that I coach or younger prospects, is that your season is really made in your off season. The off season means so much, and what you do in the off season has a tremendous impact on what's going to happen in season the next year. And I was coming off, I believe it was 1993, coming out of the South Atlantic League. Was like, all right, not really sure where I stand. I could easily get lost in the shuffle if I don't really kind of step up and have a good year. And I got after it big time. I mean, like I'd never had before in the off season. And the whole time, and I think I touched on this before last time, is in the back of your head, you're wondering, okay, is this all worth it? But you know what? You're playing baseball. This is something you've been chasing your entire life. We've been playing baseball since we're 6 or 7 years old. It's what we love. And, I'm reading all these Harvey Dorfman mental game of baseball books. And it was a 24/7 obsession, self-improvement and obsession with just on and off the field. And I went in 94 and had the year of my life. And I realized quite early, I remember in a spring training game feeling physically stronger on the mound than I ever had been. And I'm like, wow, okay, the work paid off. And I had a great year. So fast forward to the next off season, I lost my edge a little bit. And part of it was a little bit tough. When I was living in Florida, had to make a living.
Yeah.
I worked probably, I don't know, 40 hours a week. I had to pay rent, and I didn't sign for a lot of money.
Yeah.
And my parents were in South Carolina. I didn't want to go there. I wanted to be on my own. And it wasn't as, staying in shape and getting stronger and doing everything I should be doing in the off season. It was a little bit more of a challenge, and there's never an excuse.
Yeah.
There really isn't. But the bottom line is, I think I lost my edge a little bit. And fast forward to '95, I had probably earned a spot in the Knoxville, the AA rotation based off my '94 season.
Yeah.
And that lasted probably 6 or 8 weeks. And I started off pretty good. And I think I was, 2-2, 3-2 with a decent numbers. And then the league caught up to me a little bit. And then I started having some arm problems, and which was frustrating. And then Mel Queen and Mark Connor, who was a AA pitching coach, approached me about changing my arm slot. And I was, it's something I had done a little bit to left-handers with pretty good success, actually. And this is back still in the day of the situational lefty, Tony Fossis and those guys.
Yeah.
It was a big deal. You had to have a situational lefty in the big leagues.
Yeah.
That guy that could just come in and dominate left-handers or just spin the ball to death. And anyways, I would drop my arm slot on occasion to lefties. Darren Bosley got me doing that in the South Atlantic League in '93. And it was fairly successful, but I wasn't buying into that's who I really was. They were telling me if I'm going to make the big leagues, that's who I was going to be. And I just wasn't buying it. I wasn't all in on it.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure who I was, honestly, as a pitcher.
Yeah.
And looking back, they were right. But I thought it was premature. Anyways, long story short, due to injury and poor performance, I half-assed the whole lower slot thing. And I remember one day I gave up 6 runs in 1 inning. And my numbers were hideous after that. And then they came back and said, hey, listen, we're going to send you back to Dunedin. We got to get you right. Just go back down there. We're going to work you out of the pen, get right. And it wasn't really a plan of, hey, okay, go back to your old slot or continue lower slot. They just kind of sent me back there.
Right.
And it was a tough year, really tough year. And finished out the year, had good moments, but overall it was my first year in professional baseball where it was a struggle.
Yeah.
And I think it could have gone a lot different if I had kept my edge in the off season. But it was kind of a lesson that I've taken with me to this day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great point, right? I think as young kids that are out there that want to play and dream, and you should dream, right? You should dream big, right? Anybody could make it, hard work, right opportunity. It's a great opportunity even to play in the minors like we did, never to get a chance in the big leagues. I wouldn't trade it for anything, but I think anybody can make it with hard work that loves the game and to your point wants to put in the work. And I think, the game's changed a little bit that now the guys get a better salary, right? I was in the same boat. I had to work like 50, 60 hours a week, and I probably still left pro ball with $26,000 in credit card debt, right? Because I didn't want to go back and live at home, like you said. I wanted to be somewhere I could work out, and I was lucky enough. I was able to work back at Columbia in the off season in the athletic department, so I was kind of getting experience in athletic administration a little bit. But every odd end job that came up, I would do it. But the best part about it was I was able to stay in shape. I had a gym there, I had a track, I had access to the fitness coaches there, and so that always helped me be ready for spring training. It was just, to your point, it was the financial stress that we weren't getting paid a lot, so you had to hustle in the off season, and you didn't have that chance to dedicate that whole off season to baseball. I mean, again, I was lucky to dedicate it to fitness and be in good shape. But to your point, there was times I felt like I could put more time into baseball in that off season to be even more ready for the next season. So, yeah, tough.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it's like what we don't realize when we're 22, 23, 24 years old is that this game gives us a window, right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't go on endlessly until we're ready to finish. There's a window, and you got to stay healthy too. You got to stay healthy and perform and take advantage of that opportunity that you have. And it's every year matters, every day matters, every outing matters.
Yeah.
And it's kind of, you looking back, it's like, wow, people would say that, but it's real. It really is real. And people get hurt, but I mean, especially the pitcher.
Yeah.
We all come down with injuries eventually.
Yeah.
The very few, the freaks of nature, pitching in their 40s, Clemens and Nolan Ryan, those guys that are physical beasts and with great mechanics, and okay, they'll pitch into their 40s, but 99% of the rest of us don't.
Yeah.
And we have our window of opportunity there that it's got to happen.
Yeah, I got lucky. So I after that meeting, I got moved into the bullpen, and I was like, all right, I got to figure this out. And I got a spot start here and there. You get some rainouts, and like you said, maybe some guy was hurt, his arm wasn't feeling good, and I had a couple good spot starts. Was pitching okay out of the pen, up and down. And then late in the season, they decided, hey, let's give this guy a chance. He got a good split finger, maybe make him a closer. So similar to you with the arm slot, they're like, hey, this guy was a starter, strikes out a lot of guys with the split. Let's give him a chance as a closer. I remember coming in, getting a close, got a save one game, pitched real well. And then 2 nights later, get the second opportunity. So I'm thinking, now I'm the closer, Remember, I got 2 quick outs, and then the next batter hits a ground ball. We talked about him last time. My roommate, Mike Coolball, for a number of years, God bless him with what happened with Mike, Easy ground ball to end the game, get my second save in a row. And he kind of bobbles it a little bit, and then he fires it over first base, and the guy goes to second, So still 2 outs, guy in second. Next guy up, just real pesky at bat. I mean, he's just fouling off every pitch, just barely staying alive. Maybe even the umpire misses a strike 3 call or something. It's like a 9-10 pitch at bat. And my fastball was my best pitch. Split finger was my second. Then maybe a changeup was probably my third. I had pretty good changeup. And I had a curveball, I threw in there occasionally. It was probably my 4th pitch. And the catcher calls the curve. And I remember it was a good curve. It was down and away. And the guy just kind of reached out and flung it over third base for a bloop single over third. And they tie up the game. And it went to the 10th inning. And they left me in. I forget what happened. I think it was another error and a bunt. And then maybe another bloop hit. I didn't get hit hard, but that's how the game goes, right? It's not always fair. And so I remember after the game, I was down a little bit. Mike felt really bad, cool ball, that he made that error or whatever. But the coach brought me aside and he said, what pitch did you get beat on that 9th inning play, I said, a curve. He goes, you never get beat on your 4th best pitch in that situation. So even though this guy fouled off like 8 pitches, he's like, you still got to go back to the fastball or split. So, it kind of goes back to what you said is you're 22, 23 years old. You don't know this stuff, right? And you only get that one opportunity. And I never closed again after that game. It was like, they gave someone else a chance to start closing for the last month of the season. But, it could be just one opportunity, one play that changed. If I close the rest of that year and get 7 saves and then, hey, now I'm a closer, right? So it's just interesting how that goes,
Yeah.
So your season, you said that ended okay, but where did it go from there in the off season?
So the off season, and then kind of like it was an interesting. The '95 year was an experience, and I buckled down. I got after it big time in that off season, and went back. I think I lived with my parents in South Carolina. Just worked out, worked my tail off, got in great shape. I came to spring training in '96, and the Blue Jays were under completely new ownership, front office leadership. I believe Pat Gillett just left.
Yeah.
I think Gord Ash was now the GM, who had been there forever. But we had a new farm director, we had a new pitching coordinator, Carl Keel was the farm director, and Rick Peterson was the new pitching coordinator. And they didn't know us from we were just 25-year-old relievers in AA, right?
Yeah.
And anyways, I feel I had a great spring. Spring of '96, I threw the ball very, very well. I was working out for the AAA team, and I feel like I never really got a fair shake to make a club that spring. I feel like I was on the bubble going in, but I was never really given a chance. I probably threw, 6-7 innings, gave up 1 run, and threw very well. Anyways, I got that call into the office. I'll never forget. And was stretching one morning in the outfield. One of the trainers comes, "Hey, Carl wants to talk to you." And she, right away what's going on.
Yeah.
And I sat there and looked him in the eye. He looked at me in the eye, and it was a good conversation. He's like, "I don't have a spot for you. It's crunch time here. We're in a numbers crunch. I don't have a spot for you on the AA team. I'm not going to send you back to AA or single A." And I looked at him and said, "Hey, so you don't think I can pitch in the big leagues then?" And he looks at me. He goes, "I think it's doubtful." And it was, I didn't completely believe him. I knew I could pitch in the big leagues. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Could I get to the big leagues and stay there? That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Probably, honestly, if you're being realistic.
Yeah.
And so, but I was pissed. I mean, I was like ready to prove the world wrong, and I was like, "There's no way in hell I'm stopping. This is just the beginning. This is just a minor stumbling block." And he kind of gave me some options. Hey, here at the Northern League, George Mitterwald's managing a team up there. Doug Alt was up there. We had some contacts. He gave me some numbers. If you want to keep playing, you're left-handed, go for it. I just can't help you right here. So it was a really tough pill to swallow, and all of a sudden you're on your own. You got no income, and there's all kinds of unknowns. It's kind of scary, but anyways, I went to the Northern League and pitched my ass off. I think I won 10 or 11 games up there, and got a chance to play in Mexico after that, and Asia, and ended up playing about 4 more years. So
nice. Yeah,
it was an interesting experience, though.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah, I left '95. I was back at Columbia, as I said. I was getting ready for '96. I didn't know what was in the cards, right? I had started. I got in that closing role, then just kind of went back to the bullpen. Maybe I think I got one more spot start toward the end of the year, and I remember the end of year meeting. It was kind of really disappointing meeting for me. When I look back on the game, and I don't want to sound bitter, right? There's definitely moments, like you said, where you have this meeting with this new guy Keel and doesn't know you guys, and maybe you're not getting a fair shake, but that's part of the game, right? And I remember being in the meeting with Garth Orge and Mark Connor, to talk about how the season go. And I still remember, like, there's certain things in your life you don't forget, right? And he's like, "You have an Ivy League education from Columbia. Why are you still playing this game?" And inside of me, I had to pause. I give myself credit when I look back at that moment, because there's a lot of anger and stuff, like you said, as a younger person. You still don't know how everything works, and I remember I paused, and I took a moment, and I'm like, I'm not going to answer that with anger, I'm going to figure out what's the right answer here, because I know he's trying to piss me off or something, And I did. I think I was silent for a good 30 seconds, and I was just kind of looking at him like, you really, in a business world, you couldn't ask that question, right? Like, we're here to play baseball. I mean, my education has nothing to do with who's playing. And anyways, I paused and I told him I'm playing because I love the game and I want to play in the big leagues. That's what I said. And I guess the answer wasn't good enough because I didn't make it back to spring training. I was working at Columbia. I remember my dad called me. I was down in the office and they're like, "Oh, your dad's on the phone." And he's like, "Oh, you got your letter from the Blue Jays." And I said, "Oh, okay, probably AAA, whatever they used to protect us at, right? So that we didn't get picked up in the winter draft." And he goes, "No, there's a box that is checked that you've been released, And to your point, I don't think I was angry. I was shocked because I had so many good years that we've talked about over the last couple shows, And I was just, okay, what do I do now? I had an agent at the time. He wasn't a big agent, but gave him a call. And we set up a bunch of tryouts, because at least the good thing was I had time, right? Here it is November. I could still, December, January, February to try to hook on with some of spring training. And I remember the first place I went, the Phillies had a tryout. And, in the Florida State League, we get to know the other teams, right? We're going out to the bars with the guys after the game. Like, the Phillies are right there with the Blue Jays. So are the Yankees. So are the Pirates. So, the coach.
The coaches too.
Yeah, we know who the coaches are. They're good guys. And I remember walking into the Phillies, this tryout, and, there's some other minor league players. And then just a lot of hopeful college kids that didn't get drafted as free agents. There's probably 100 guys there, And they start laughing. And I'm like, what's so funny? They're like, is this like, what's that show, like Pranked or something? Like, they thought they were being pranked. Like, here's, Coates who's pitched well against us over the last couple of years. You're not trying out for the Phillies. Like, why are you here? You're still with the Blue Jays. I'm like, no, I really got released, So I thought that was a good sign and that I would hook on with another team real quick,
Mm-hmm.
So I think I did okay. And then 2 days later, I was over the Pirates in Bradenton. Had a really good conversation. And I pitched, again, the hitters aren't as good, but, struck out 4 out of 6 guys or something, so felt like I pitched pretty well. And they're like, all right, we're going to bring back a certain amount of guys for tomorrow. We want you to come back. And I'm like, well, I got to try out with the Mets tomorrow too. Like, I just struck out 4 out of 6 guys. You guys have, you got tons of books and records. The coach has got to write up stuff after every game. Like, you got all the information you need. It's not like I've been playing for 2 years. I've been playing for 5 years. So I had to make a decision. I decided, all right, I'll go over to the Mets. I told them I'm not going to come back tomorrow. I'd love to come play for you guys, but I want to make sure I have enough opportunities here. So I go over to the Mets and, pitching that many days in a row, I probably didn't have my best stuff that day. But I remember, I want to say it was the GM of the Mets, but I could be maybe mistaken. Maybe it was some head guy from the minors. And he pulled me aside and he said, "You're the only guy we're interested in here today. We think we can get you, a starting position at AA, maybe even, the 5th starter at AAA, And so, again, from these tryouts, I'm you're down because the Blue Jays let you go, but here's 3 teams, the Phillies, Pirates, and then the Mets that have given you really good feedback, Anyway, so I'm like, yeah, I'm interested. I'm ready to go. I'm staying in shape. I'm ready. And so, like, a week goes by, and actually, I had changed agents because my agent didn't know a lot of people. Jeff Torborg's son, Greg, had played with us at Columbia.
Oh, yeah.
And Greg was starting to be an agent. So I said, I'll go with Greg, because him and his dad have some more connections. Maybe this makes more sense.
Yeah.
So I reached out to Greg. I'm like, so what's going on? Like, I'm excited to go with the Mets or Pirates. And he told me that the Mets called him and said that I was fat and out of shape and I didn't look like I still wanted to play. So it's just, the funny thing about it is, like, I talked to this head guy of the minors or the GM, whoever it was, that told me to my face they had a spot at AA for sure, if not AAA for me, So the game is just weird like that, like I think you said, even with the draft, we talked about it, you don't know and you can't trust until you get drafted on the day of the draft, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. You hear all kinds of things, and you read things in this day and age, and the internet or Baseball America. None of it means anything until that actually happens.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I didn't know you got released in the spring of '95. I mean, in the off season.
Yeah, the off season in '95, I didn't go to spring training. Yeah, and I know Ben Weber. He's got a good story about when he got released in spring training.
He got released the same year with me.
With you in spring training, he was not as nice to the guy. I think he was going to throw down because I think he got released pretty late. And that, like I was just talking about, like, you get released that late, it's hard to hook on with a team at that point. You know what I mean? Like,
correct.
Yeah. So
he and I may have gotten released the same day.
Same day,
I can't remember. There was a bunch of guys late, and I remember working out with Ben Weber and Levon Largusa.
Levon, yeah.
In Clearwater, the three of us, in like for a week or two afterwards, and then Ben, I think he ended up going out to that Western League or something with you, right?
Yeah.
And I ended up going to the Northern League, and I'm not sure what happened to Goose.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I went out to that Western League. Charlie Kerfeld, who works with you, I think he still works with you. Charlie was great, had me come out there, made that team, pitched pretty well for 2 years. And then, independent ball was great, very competitive. I always felt like it was kind of like a AA league. You had some AAA players, you had some ex-big leaguers. You got to play with Les Lancaster from the Cubs for a while there.
I played with Les.
Yeah. And then, it was time after 7 years to, say goodbye to the game and thank it for all the good memories that we've been chatting about for the last couple weeks. So.
No, looking back, it's like, you love the game, love playing the game. And a big part of it, though, is the camaraderie, the guys you meet, the friends you make, the long bus rides, playing cards in the back. Playing cards all night, in the clubhouse, whatever it is. We wouldn't be sitting here this day doing this call,
the
podcast, and so those memories and friendships are special, and you just so many guys you stay in touch with, and it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah,
it's all a great experience.
Yeah, so I think the next couple weeks, we just got a couple more seconds here that, we'll just start talking about the game in general, about pitching and hitting and, some of the experiences, how you get better, right? You can't just stay the same. You got to make some changes and adjust with the hitters, and, we'll kind of get into that a little bit, and, just kind of, again, if people have questions, put them in the comments, some things that we can talk about.